ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So nice to see all of you. A few devotees are still joining. So welcome back to our series of why bad things happen to good people. Yeah. So since you're all wonderful good people, so this class applies to all of you wonderfully. Um, so we will learn some good lessons from this series. Again, like what we said, this is the second class in the series, and in this series we are discussing uh, concepts around karma and reincarnation, uh, which have been explained in the Gita, which we have discussed across the Gita as a part of the chapter overview course. But we're trying to put all these concepts together so it helps us to see some of these concepts in entirety. And we go a little bit more deeper so that we have a bit more clarity. Because when we speak about the Gita being Vedanta, uh, it states very briefly about some of the very, very fundamental concepts. Uh, uh, and sometimes, for those who are new to the subject, it's a bit hard to put all the missing pieces of the puzzle together and have a coherent end-to-end concept. So that is the objective of this series. So we are going to start. So what I'm going to do is we're going to continue from where we left off last time. And I'm going to quickly revise for 5 minutes what we discussed last time, because this is a continuation. This is part 2 of the series. I'm going to be sharing the slides. I've uploaded the recording of the last video, but I noticed somehow that some of the slides which I had played on my side, somehow in the recording, the slides didn't move through. I observed that it got stuck on a particular slide strangely. Anyway, I'm going to quickly revise in 5 minutes what we discussed, at least the key conclusion, so that we pick it up from where we left. Okay, just give me a minute. I'm going to share slide deck. Okay, so I hope all of you can see it. So we discussed last Wednesday in part 1 about why the material world was created and is the material world really a necessity. So when we talk about karma, when we talk about reincarnation, we want to first address the root cause. Why at all this whole cycle of karma is necessary? Why at all we need to be in the material world? Why at all this repeated birth and death came about. Because to some people, it seems as if God has been unfair, that God has put, or rather thrown, apparently, even though he has not, thrown all of us into a helpless situation of ignorance and suffering, and now left it up to all of us to fend for ourselves and to escape from the misery that we are trapped in. So that is obviously not the fact. Yeah, and that's why we are discussing on the basis of the Gita that why we are in this situation if God is indeed all knowing, all loving, and all powerful. So we discussed in the last week that even though God is all loving, all powerful, all merciful, he has given the special gift he has endowed in each and every living entity who's manifested from him. And why was that gift of free will essential? Because without free will, an individual consciousness is not truly an independent living entity. In fact, love has no meaning if there is no choice. Yeah. So if I keep gun on somebody's head and say you love me, and that person says, yeah, I love you. What is the value of this kind of love? Will that kind of a statement of love make anybody happy? Obviously not. Because if there is freedom to love, there must also be freedom to not love. And that is the reason the Lord also gives this freedom to all living entities. That while they are eternally his part and parcels, while the very fact is that by nature, the soul is most happy in association with the Lord, in service of the Lord, in cooperation with the desire of the Lord, in the spiritual realm of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. The living entity is nonetheless endowed with the free will, where he has the choice that he can exercise whether he wants to love God or not love him. And for those who choose to not love him, spiritual world is no longer a good place. The Lord has to create for such non-cooperative, rebellious living entities a place which allows them to forget him. Just like we discussed in the material world, if somebody is rebellious and refuses to cooperate with the state laws, a prison house is created. Similarly, using the potency of Durga Devi, a Durga is created in this material world. Durga means prison house. The prison house of material energy, where the living entity is given the facility to forget. So living entities are put into this prison house of the material world for two reasons. Just like in this world, a prison house is for both punishment and purification. And the punishment is given with the intention of purification. Similarly, in a forgetful situation, when the living entity, the soul, is placed in the material world, the whole idea of creation of this material world is to make the soul realize of the futility of trying to find happiness independent of God. Just like if a part of the body decides to be happy independent of the body, does it even make sense? Can a part of the hand which is part of the body, if I disconnect it from the body, can it actually even exist and function naturally the way it is supposed to function? Obviously not. Similarly, the soul is a part and parcel of the Supreme Truth. So it is actually not possible for the soul to be in a proper state of natural function when it is disconnected from the Lord. And that is the realization that the soul needs to come back to. And the soul has to desire on his own, oh, I have misunderstood. I have wrongly exercised my independence and I want to now rectify it and re-establish my relationship with God. And that is the process of purification. And that, in essence, is the process of yoga, reconnecting, yuja, to connect. And Durga, who's the prison keeper of this material prison, punishes the living entities to bring them to this realization through 7 ways. First is the 4 miseries of material existence: birth, old age, disease, and death. And 3 kinds of additional miseries: Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik, and Adhyatmik. So when the living entity is continuously troubled by this, because of his forgetfulness, by Devi Durga, who's continuously punishing him because of his forgetfulness, because of his rebellion, the soul eventually comes to the realization that I must escape this prison and go back to the spiritual world. So while in this prison, the living entity is continuously suffering the 6 contaminations of his consciousness in the form of illusion, pride, anger, greed, envy, and lust. So material world was compared to a hospital. It's also compared to a school where we are being regularly tested. We are given a syllabus, we are asked to study, and we have to give an exam. And we have to keep giving the exams until we write the right answers, and then we graduate. So just like studies is painful, exercise is painful, recovering in a hospital is painful, but all these 3 lead to a better tomorrow. Similarly, the living entity in this material world, while goes through painful situations, all this pain is not without a good intent. It is meant to help the soul realize its actual potential so that it can ultimately come to a state of full bliss, which is actually its rightful claim. Just like gold, when heated in fire, increases in purity. Or exercise, which initially gives pain but leads to good health. Or the journey from the cocoon to the butterfly, where this insect goes through so much struggle, but eventually the outcome is a beautiful, colorful butterfly which the whole world admires. So, even though it seems tough, even though the material world seems like a pessimistic, miserable place, it is pessimistic and miserable for those who, even after going through all these miseries, fail to learn the lessons, who don't even attempt to learn the lessons, who try to make the prison a happy place. The idea of the prison is not to make you comfortable in the prison. The idea of the prison is to give us lessons so that we realize our mistake and want to step out of the prison again as a good citizen who works cooperatively with the laws of the government. So this is what we actually discussed. I want to revise it because it's very important. Now, having understood why the material world has been created and how and why the soul was placed here. So as soon as the soul desired to be independent of the Lord, to enjoy independent of the Lord, because that is not possible in the spiritual world, the living entity is placed into this material world, into this area where all these rebellious living entities are. So now the important question is, what is it in this material world which is actually binding the living entities in this world? That is the next important question. Because all of you will say, oh yes, Prabhuji, you are right. Bhagavad Gita is right. We have forgotten Krishna. We have come to this world. And we all agree there are 30 of us, 30 families connected to this class right now. We all agree that we have made a mistake. Let us go back. Okay, so as soon as 10 p.m., can we all say bye-bye to the material world and go back to the spiritual world? Yes, how many of us can do that? So it's not so easy. Why? Because we are all shackled to this material world. And how is it that we are shackled? What is it that is shackling us? What is it that is tying us down? That's a very interesting question. Because when we talk about liberation, when we talk about mukti, even before talking about freedom, we must first understand what it is that is binding us. One may say karma is binding us. Well, that is true. But at a deeper level, what is even leading us to perform karma? Is there a principle even deeper, even finer, which is actually the essential principle, which is the cause of bondage? So today we'll be focusing on discussing this point, and this is a very interesting understanding. This has been discussed in Bhagavad Gita in great detail in the 14th chapter, the three modes of material nature. So I hope most of you have attended that chapter, so you have some idea. But now we'll be looking at this idea very specifically in terms of how the three modes of nature result in tying the living entity into this material world. So that is the focus of our discussion. And if we get time today, we'll go into the topic, which is the fifth topic. Let's see if we do. I have doubts. I think we'll probably be able to cover only topic 4, but let's see. This is a very short topic though, on time. And after having covered these two, because this topic is the topic of Prakriti, this topic 5, is the topic of Kala or time, and chapter 6 is specifically going into the details of karma and reincarnation. So why these other topics are needed? Because without understanding Prakriti and Kala, we cannot talk about karma. Why? Because by definition, the definition of karma depends on the definition of these entities. Karma is the activity performed by the conditioned soul. That's why we discussed about the conditioning of the soul. By the conditioned soul in Prakriti and under the influence of Prakriti, which is what we're discussing today, under the purview of time or Kala. So, we will discuss about Prakriti and possibly about Kala, and that will help us to understand the concept of karma better. So let's move on. So we spoke about this concept of prisoner. All of us living entities who are in this material world, how many of us? A billion? No. There are 7 billion human beings, but how many living entities are there in this universe? What to speak of the universe just on planet Earth? If you consider the total number of living entities, not humans, living entities, all forms of life, right from microbes, birds, insects, trees, all kinds of life, would it be a trillion? Would it be a quadrillion? I think it would be more. It's just so huge. And we're just talking about Earth. Earth is not only what is on land, it is what is in the sea, it is what is in the sky, it is what is deep inside the earth as well. It's unlimited living entities. So what to speak of this universe? And what to speak of the entire material creation? It is practically countless. And that's why this question was asked last week. What will happen when the material world will become empty and everyone becomes perfected? There are so many unlimited living entities that is almost never going to happen. Anyway, so when the living entity comes into this material world, what happens to him first? So my question is, what is the first thing done to a prisoner? Anyone would like to answer? What is the first thing done to a prisoner when he comes and joins a prison?
Given a room.
Stay in the jail. The prison closed.
Yes. Before he's given a room, he's given something else, which I think Amit mentioned. And that is, he is first given a change of clothes. Please, everybody be on mute. Yeah, he's first given a change of clothes. So why is he given a change of clothes? So something very interesting. So I'm going to show you some slides. And you have to tell me why we need different kinds of clothes. So you can all recognize who this is. Yes, I hope you all know who this is. I don't have to mention. So this star, I will show some pictures which are in different kinds of costumes. And then I'm going to ask you, why do we need different kind of costumes? Okay, so here she is, Aishwarya Rai is in a very comfortable casual dress. But the same lady, when she goes to an office, she's wearing a coat. She's wearing a jacket. So we wear different clothes and we change our clothes based on the environment that we are in and the function that we want to perform. The same Aishwarya, when she's dancing in a movie, she's wearing a different set of clothes. She's not dancing in a jacket. When she's exercising, she's wearing a different set of clothes, which are suited for the purpose of exercise. Tight fitting, those which are airy in nature, which allow flexing of the body in a suitable way, which do not inhibit movement and stretching in any way. But when the same person goes to the beach, the clothes are different. The clothes are in such a way that they are easy and comfortable to function within the water, to play in the water, to swim in the water. But if you want to go really deep into the water, then even those clothes of swimming are not good enough. Then you need to wear a diving suit. Oh, and if you need to go outside the earth to a very, very alien environment, then the body needs to be covered fully with a suit to protect and alienate the body from the surrounding environment, because the surrounding environment is so foreign that the body cannot directly interact with the surrounding environment. In fact, it will be harmed if it doesn't cover itself fully. Okay, so the scriptures say, similar to this, just like in this world, the living entity, the man, the woman wears different kinds of clothes to interact with different kinds of environment. Similarly, the soul, the living entity, when it comes into the material world, material nature gives the soul different costumes. What kind of costumes? And why do you need a costume? Because the soul is from the spiritual world. And the soul has come into a material world. It has come into a foreign environment. The soul cannot directly interact with matter. So in order to interact with matter, the soul has to be covered with a costume, which is made of matter, so that through that costume, the soul can interact with matter. So material nature gives the living entity different types of costumes. And why there are so many different types of costumes? It is based on the environment that that particular living entity has to live in. And it is based on the function that the living entity needs to perform in that environment, that material environment. So the scriptures say that the Prakriti, material nature, gives the living entities 84 lakh varieties of costumes or bodies. So each of these costumes is called a species. So you can see in this picture how there are so many species, right from the lower species gradually going to higher species. And the highest species, the most evolved, is considered the human being. So there's a very beautiful verse in the Padma Puran which actually describes this. It says, Jalajanavalakshani sthavara lakshavimshati kramayo rudra sankhyaakaha pakshinam dashalakshanam trinchal lakshani pashavaha chatur lakshani manavaha. What does this mean? That the 84 lakh, 8.4 million varieties of species, each having its own kind of body, can be divided into 6 subcategories according to Padma Puran. There are 9 like types of clothes for various species which live in water. There are 20 lakh or 2 million for non-moving living entities such as trees. There are 11 lakh species of insects and reptiles and 10 lakh species of birds and 30 lakh species of quadrupeds, which means 4-legged animals, and 4 lakh species of humans. If you add all this up, it comes to 8.4 million. So I'm going to take you through some slides just to give you the kind of variety and variegatedness which material nature manifests and the kind of amazing bodies that the material nature has given to living entities who are situated in the material world. So we are first talking about Jalaja Navalakshani, the living entities which are in water. Here you can see the whale. Here you can see the whale, which is amongst the largest living entities on the planet. The same soul which is in the microbe, such a small tiny body, same soul is in this huge whale in front of which a human being is so small that it can easily be swallowed by the whale. This is a type of shark. It's also there, and so many kinds of water living entities. Then there are the trees. Within the tree kingdom itself, so many wonderful kinds of species. Beautiful trees, green, multicolored leaves, full of beautiful foliage. And then there are the insects and the reptiles. Each of them designed so wonderfully by material nature in such a way that their body is exactly designed for the function that they are supposed to perform. If you see, the bodies of living entities are designed in such a way that they are friendly to their environment, friendly to live and survive and interact in that environment. So this is a dragonfly, and how it has been given wings in such a way that it can fly in a particular way. Same with the butterfly. And this is the reptile world. Just amazing, just the eyes that some of these insects have, the compound eyes. We will not go into the biology of this, but it's so amazing when we go deep into the various kind of species and see the way some of these bodies are designed. we will realize that some of the senses of some of these living entities are actually so powerful and so much superior even to the senses of the human beings. For example, the sense of smell in animals, so much better. The sense of sight, the eagle and the hawk is much better than the human beings. Similarly, some have extraordinary sense of hearing, and so on and so forth. It's so amazing. And I think this is the iguana, if I'm not wrong. This is the reptile kingdom. This is a kind of turtle. So amazing. The amphibians, the fishes. How for the fishes, they have an arrangement to breathe inside the water. How amphibians also have a special characteristic of how they can spend so much time under the water. They can breathe inside and they can breathe outside, or they can be prolonged period under the water without suffocating like the human beings. So amazing. Or a turtle, which lives practically, this is a tortoise actually, it's not a turtle. Tortoise who can sometimes live for over 100 years. And the birds are another very beautiful, graceful species, some of whom can fly without any GPS for thousands of kilometers, the migratory birds. So amazing. Some of them so adept with such a kind of body and such a kind of intelligence, material intelligence, still about eating, sleeping, mating, defending, but an intelligence where they can make such amazing nests and homes, which even if we were given all the raw material, we wouldn't be able to do, even with our so-called superior intelligence and our better tools and our better hands. Very amazing. The kind of the vision that is there for the eagle and the hawk, again, very amazing. So each of these species of life, very beautiful. The peacock, amongst the most beautiful amongst the bird species. Each of these species, the Lord has endowed with some extraordinary potency. And each of these species has certain attributes which are so amazing and extraordinary, which practically no other species has. Some of these eagles and hawks can literally plunge into the water and capture fish and then fly off. Amazing. That's the kind of skills they have been given. That's the kind of body they have. So these are the birds. And here come the quadrupeds, the four-legged living entities. The camel, also another excellent example, how he's able to actually store within his body some water so that, for extended periods of time, he can actually go without water. How his eyes are specially designed to withstand even sandstorms. It's just so amazing how even the camel is designed. And then there are these kind of living entities. And the polar bear, for example, can sleep for 6 months during the winter. And then there is the elephant, which also is so unique in its own way. How the animals of prey are given the kind of paws, the speed, the teeth by which they can actually catch prey. Again, a costume designed to suit a function. Or the gazelles, how they are given the speed to protect themselves from predatory animals. So graceful and so fast. And how certain hunting animals who hunt in groups are also given a particular set of special abilities. So the more we think about this, we're just showing a few snaps. We should be able to wonder at the amazing creation which the Lord has done through the agency of material nature. Remember, each of these species is nothing but a dress, a costume on the soul. So do you all remember, of course, I'll probably go through the last one. So the last is human species. Now you may be wondering, why human species? There are 4 lakh human species mentioned. So when the scriptures talk about human species, it is not just talking about species in terms of the shape of the body. It is talking about species in terms of the spiritual evolutionary scale. So even amongst those who have a human-like body, which begins at its lowest stage from those who are deeply in the mode of ignorance, and going to the highest scale from the most lowest of uncivilized human beings to more civilized beings, gradually going into more and more education, more and more sophistication, finally coming to the point of developing good qualities, becoming godly, going all the way up to the highest in the human species. When we talk about human, it also includes the upper species all the way up to all the devatas, because they are all human-like species. Brahma being the highest amongst all those species. So 400,000 species of humans, from the lowest to the highest. The higher you go, the higher they are evolved in the mode of goodness and in spiritual knowledge. So summarily, these are the 8.4 million species. Again, as we discussed, 8.4 million costumes which cover the soul. Now, a question for all of you before we move on to the next subtopic. The soul has put on this costume. This is a question, so I'm expecting an answer. The soul has put on this costume on all of us. What is it? Because the soul is spiritual and this costume is material. What is it that is causing this costume? Different costumes. You may have different, and why we have different costumes, we'll come to that in a while. Yeah, we will answer that question, but a little later. But each of us has a costume. Right now, I'm having this costume. What you're seeing right now on your screen as me, you're not seeing me as the soul. You're seeing my body. You're seeing my costume. And my current costume happens to be one of the 4 lakh human species. Hopefully not too low down on the ladder, but somewhere there. So what is it that is tying our soul to this costume? That is the question. The soul is spiritual and the costume is material. What is it?
Oh, is it the super soul?
Is the super soul. Okay. What else?
Modes of material nature, Prabhuji.
Modes
And
of material
our
nature.
karmas.
Karma.
Karmas. Okay.
False ego, material intelligence. Material
Okay.
intelligence.
Okay. What else? I want to hear all the answers, then I will comment on it. Okay, so yes said false ego. Anything else?
Can you repeat question, Prabhuji?
The question is, what is it that causes the body to stick to the soul at its most deepest level? Because the body
Attachment.
is
Attachment.
okay. Divya Gaurangi Mataji
Yeah,
says
Prabhuji,
attachment.
the two things what I feel, one is, yes, sorry. One is past deeds and desires, and the second thing is desire to lord it over material nature.
Okay.
We want to enjoy separate from the Lord, Prabhuji. So because we want to be the enjoyer, we don't. So as long as our desires are separate from Lord's and we don't want to serve Him but enjoy ourselves, we will remain in this material world.
Okay, fine. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Mataji. Anything else?
Prabhu, how about karma, Prabhu?
Okay, karma.
Ahankar, Prabhuji.
Okay, who said that?
Veena.
Reena ji. Okay, okay. I thought so. Okay. And any other answer which is different from all these answers?
I think it's not knowing God as well, it's just not understanding God, not having a knowledge of God.
Also,
Prabhuji,
Prabhuji,
I
we
and
are identifying with the body. Sorry, we are identifying with the body instead of the soul. So everything about us, as long as it remains material, then we will remain here. So, for example, my body is separate to the soul. Soul is the Satchitananda. So as long as I keep saying I'm Darshana, then I will remain here instead of saying I'm soul, God's part and parcel of God.
Okay. Okay. Any other answer before I comment? I'm not saying yes or no to any of the answers. I'm just listening to the answers right now. Then I'll comment. I'm not saying that the right answer hasn't been given. I just want to understand if there are different other opinions. Anything else? Okay. So a quick few comments. First of all, you're all right to some extent. Okay. None of the answers are altogether wrong. Okay. But essentially, this is very important to understand. See, essentially, like what was mentioned, I think, was it Nimisha ji or somebody else mentioned? One is our forgetfulness of God, which is the cause of coming into this material world, which manifests itself in this world. See, is it actually possible to tie the soul to the body with anything? Huh? Can any material thing tie? Because in the second chapter, Krishna has already said, Nainam chindante shastrani, nainam dahati pavakana chainam kledyantyapun dashosheti maruta. That nothing material can impact the soul proper. So what is the stickiness caused by? So like some of you actually correctly answered, the avidya, which is the original problem, avidya meaning ignorance of one's real identity, leads to a misidentification. And that misidentification is what is known as ahankara or false ego. And it is that misidentification of ahankara or false ego which brings about the stickiness between the soul and the body. And that eventually, that ahankar is the root cause. And then when that is extrapolated, it results in, of course, the ahankar is also of the nature of the three gunas. And then from there, the various karmas come. So yes, the three modes bind, the karmas bind, all these bind, but ultimately, it is all this is ultimately hanging on to the anchor of ahankar. And in simple words, ahankar means the misidentification. So let me give you another example of misidentification. Okay. So let's say that you come, in a car, a very beautiful car, you park the car and you get down from the car. Let's say it's a brand new Rolls Royce. Get down from the car. As soon as you get down from the car, you just go to a nearby shop and you're buying something. You left the car on. You thought, I'm just stepping out just 10 meters. The shop is, I'll quickly buy. No need to, lock it and all that. In the meanwhile, somebody jumps into your car, brand new car, and he starts driving it away. Okay, I hope you can all imagine. Now tell me, what will you do as you see this person reversing the car from the car park that you have parked and slowly driving the car away to the crowded market? What will you do?
Try and approach maybe.
The immediate spontaneous reaction, of course, all your police complaints and other things will follow eventually, but the immediate spontaneous reaction will be we will run behind the car as the person is driving away. Is it not? Wouldn't that be the normal reaction? Huh? As he's driving away, running, wait, this is not your car, this is my car. And as the car is driving through the crowd, this man, the owner, we are chasing behind the car as if there is actually a chain connecting the car and us. Can you visualize this? The car turns into a right lane. We are running behind and we also turn into the right lane. When the car turns into a left lane, we are also trying because we want to catch up with the car and stop the car and get back our car. Yeah, you can imagine this scene. I hope you all can. Now, the question is that the car and us or the driver is actually totally different. So what is it that is causing this person, us, the driver, to chase behind this car as if he is tied to the car?
Attachment.
Attachment.
Sense of ownership.
Sense of ownership. Yeah. So ultimately, it is this sense of identification that this is my car. It's an extension of me. Isn't it? We're not running behind every car, right? There are so many cars there. But the car for which we have developed a sense of, like Amit said, ownership, a sense of belonging, a sense of identification, we are running behind it even though we are not tied. It is our sense of identification towards that car that is causing us to remain attached to the car, that we are chasing the car wherever the car is going. Correct or not? Yeah. So similarly, the living entity in this material world who has forgotten the Lord has developed a sense of misidentification, ahankara, with the bodily covering. That identification, actually misidentification, is what is causing the stickiness, so that wherever the body is going, the soul is following, because the soul is misidentifying, thinking that this body is me. Krishna has already given this example that the soul is just like a person and the body is like a costume. And when one costume becomes old and worn out, that costume is disposed and another costume is put on. But the living entity not realizing its own identity and misidentifying with the body brings about this kind of stickiness. Okay. So again, the summary is that it is the misidentification of the soul because of its forgetfulness of the Lord that is causing the soul to be attached and entrapped in the body. And this sense of attachment manifests itself in this world in the form of the three modes. Now, before I come to the three modes, I want to spend 2 minutes on this slide. So we spoke about this whole material world as a prison. Yes. And we are all being put into this material world. But the interesting thing about this prison is, even though we are all in a prison, apparently there is no prison wall. True or not? Is there a prison wall? No. If we want, we can all escape. But the interesting thing is, none of us are actually escaping. Isn't it an amazing prison? It's a prison where the prisoners, even though there is no wall, they are unable to escape. So what is it that is keeping these prisoners trapped? How are we bound in this prison house of the material world? So scriptures say that the living entity is bound in this material energy by the chains of three types. And these three types of chains are the three modes of material nature, the three gunas. What are the three gunas? Sattva guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. So what are these gunas? Very briefly, the gunas are the qualities, are the three kinds of qualities that the material consciousness of a living entity who's trapped in this material world develops in association with the corresponding qualities within material nature. These are qualities of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And it is these qualities which bind one. Even the ahankar that we spoke about as the original binding factor is nothing but of these three qualities. Ahankar can also be in goodness, passion, and ignorance. So central to the understanding of the concept of bondage is the understanding of the concept of the three gunas. That is why across Vedas and Vedanta, the topic of the three gunas is brought up again and again and again. And even though we may think, oh, this is technical, why do I need to understand this? The point is, if we do not understand the three gunas, then we do not understand how we are bound. If we don't even know how and where we are bound, where is the question of becoming free? If you are bound at the hands and the legs and you're trying to liberate yourself at your waist, is that going to be fruitful? No. We have to first understand what is it that is binding us and then work there to remove the chains which are binding us. Then we can be free. That is why understanding of the three gunas is quite important. So if you have not understood these gunas, we are going to be discussing the gunas briefly, but for a more detailed understanding of the gunas, please refer to our summary of the 14th chapter. It is already there in the playlist of the Bhagavad Gita chapter overview. So chapter 14, we have spoken around half an hour, 40 minutes exclusively on this topic in great detail. So I'm going to cover this in brief, but please refer to that section. So this is a brief synoptic chart. What this is saying is all these three gunas, goodness, passion, ignorance, are all chains. They are all jails. It is not that Sattva Guna is outside the jail. No, Sattva Guna is also jail because Sattva Guna is a quality of material nature. And material nature binds the Jiva when the material nature, when the Jiva misidentifies with the material nature. So the lowest kind of misidentification is Tamoguna. This is like a C-class jail. The lowest class of jail, where there is darkness, dirtiness. That kind of a bonding is compared to an iron chain, a very heavy iron chain, very gross. And there are some who are in the mode of passion, which is a B-class jail, a bit better than some light there. There is some food given there. That kind of entrapment or jail is known as a, or chain is known as a silver chain. So in ignorance, in the iron chain, the characteristics are sleep, laziness, intoxication. Whereas for Rajoguna, the characteristics of the silver chain, what is it that binds the living entity? It is the unlimited desires. It is greed and lust, which is the characteristic of Rajoguna. It is the qualities of greed and lust which are permeating the consciousness, which are the chain which keep the living entity attached. For Tamoguna, what kept the living entity attached to the material world is their intoxication, their laziness, their madness, the sleep. Those kind of qualities keep them entangled. And when we come to the highest amongst the modes, material though, that kind of binding is a golden chain. The characteristic of this golden chain is that the living entity is free from sins. He's not indulging in grossly sinful activity, and he has some sense of happiness being in the mode of goodness. But nonetheless, the living entity is still misidentifying with the body. The living entity is still trying to find happiness in matter, which means the misidentification with the body is still there. The stickiness of the soul with the body is still there. That is why there is still a chain. Although it is now much weaker, but the chain exists, the binding exists, and that's why it is compared to a chain made of gold. So reflect on what we discussed deeply. I'm mentioning this in brief, but if you understand this point clearly, you will go a long way in understanding the nature of our bondage. So we can discuss later more in question answers if you have. So the basic point of these different modes is people who are influenced by these different modes have different qualities, different aspirations, different kinds of actions. They are all bonded, but they express themselves differently. And we discussed briefly of how, what are the key characteristics of those who are bound by the different. These modes affect practically all aspects of the living entity's life. When a living entity is affected by a mode, it affects the kind of food they take. People in goodness like fresh, sweet foods, in passion like spicy foods, in ignorance like foods which are decaying, which are rotting, which are intoxicating. So this is of course just one example. The modes of material nature actually affect all kinds of our interaction in this world. It affects our profession. It affects what we like to wear. It affects what we like to talk, the books we like to read. Even music, for example, in goodness, in passion, and in ignorance. I'm not going to spend more time discussing each of these, but I think you get the idea. One is very beautiful, pleasing, satisfying, peaceful music. Passionate music is extremely exciting, and music in the mode of ignorance is actually dulling nature. So very nice example. In the same family, three individuals affected by the three gunas, the three brothers, Ravan, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishan. Vibhishan is an example of a living entity in the mode of goodness. Ravan is a wonderful example of the mode of passion, because he was always interested in greed and lust. Correct? He was interested in wealth and women. And ignorance, Kumbhakarna, Tamogun, perfect example. I am going to sleep all the time. When I wake up, I will eat and then I'll again sleep. Perfect example of mode of ignorance, Kumbhakarna. So I hope this will also help you to understand this concept a bit better. So when we talk about the modes, clearly the mode of ignorance is at the lowest. Then comes Rajoguna. Then the highest is Sattva Guna. So is actually Sattva Guna our topmost objective? No. Why? Because the mode of goodness or Sattva Guna is not enough by itself to lead to liberation. Why? Because it is still a category of misidentification. The soul is still misidentifying with the body. The soul is still trying to enjoy the body. It's just that it has given up the sinful, greedy, lusty ways. It is trying to develop good qualities, but it is still attached to finding happiness in matter. So while mode of goodness is good because it helps us to understand things as they are, the mode of goodness by itself is not the final destination. The mode of goodness is actually a stepping stone to transcendence. Just like a cow who's tied to a rope may seem free and can move around a lot, but nonetheless, she's still tied with a rope. So there is a limit as to how much she can move. Or another example, a man, he lives very close to the airport, but he still misses the flight, which means he still remains at the airport, he still remains in the city and doesn't reach the final destination. So mode of goodness is like that. It brings you close, it gives you the opportunity to take the flight, to go beyond the three gunas. What does it mean to go beyond the three gunas? It means to give up the misidentification with the material body altogether. To give up avidya altogether and actually fully realize vidya. And what is that vidya? Jiver swarup hoy Krishner nityadas. That my eternal nature is that I am spiritual and I am part and parcel of Krishna. And my duty is to eternally serve Krishna. And the living entity is established in this vidya. He is able to jump from the platform of the mode of goodness and go to the state of nirgun. Nirgun means freedom from the three modes, and achieve the platform of Shuddha or Vishuddha Sattva, which is the transcendental platform where the living entity can actually realize its full spiritual potential and attain the spiritual world. So in this world, people may go from one cell to another, from cell C to B to A, from tamogun to rajogun to sattvagun, but still it is simply movement within the jail. We are not interested in moving within the jail. We are interested in being free from the jail. And that is why the jail keeper, Durga Devi, is actually the Lord's energy. Mama Maya Duratyaya. Krishna says, she's my Maya, she's my energy. She is performing the service of purifying the living entity. Across these three modes, the living entities are suffering from the 7 kind of kleshas that we discussed earlier. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, and Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik, and Adhyatmik kleshas. And thus, she is motivating us to go higher and higher and higher. From Tamo to Rajo, from Rajo to Sattva, from Sattva to Vishuddha Sattva platform, so that we can actually transcend the material world. Go from the region of Avidya to Vidya. Tamaso ma Jyotir Gamaya, Mrityor ma Amrutam Gamaya. That's what the Vedas say. We have to go from the realm of mortality to immortality, which means no longer birth, old age, disease, death. One circumvents and escapes from the cycle of birth and death and reaches the platform of eternal existence. Back to the spiritual world, back home, back to Godhead, where the living entity in a pure spiritual form, which is free from birth, old age, disease, and death, which is free from Adibhautik, Adidaivik, and Adhyatmic miseries, can eternally enjoy a blissful life full of knowledge directly in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just like you see this boy is being chased by the dog. If a dog is chasing us, what do? We look around for the master of the dog, to request the master to control the dog so that we are no longer bothered. Similarly, when Maya is hounding us and chasing us, the master of Maya, Krishna has already said, Mayadhyakshena Prakriti. Under my supervision, Prakriti is working. So the living entity, when is hounded by the dog of Maya, turns to the master of this dog, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and prays to him, please save me from this dog. Please save me from these miseries. And when the soul surrenders in this way to the Lord controls this dog so that the living entity can be free from these miseries and escape from the clutches of material existence. So this is the summary of what we discussed on Prakriti today. We are given punishment in this material world, in this prison house of 7 types: birth, death, old age, disease, and the 3 types of miseries: Adi Bhautik, Adhyatmik, and Adi Daivik. And then in this world, we are continuously being purified through this punishment so that we can become free from the results of our material association. And this association with matter results in 6 kinds of undesirable qualities, which are Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara. While we are in this world, based on our consciousness, our qualities, we are given different types of bodies. All of these bodies are like different costumes. There are 8.4 million species, which means 8.4 million costumes. Each of these costumes allows the soul to be in a particular environment, perform a particular function, enjoy particular kinds of sense enjoyments. Each of these bodies are associated with certain modes of nature. They are granted to the living entity. We'll discuss this in more detail subsequently, based on what the living entity desires and what the living entity deserves. So we'll discuss this point in more detail later, but just keep this in mind. The costume is given based on what you desire first and also what you deserve. And while it is avidya which results in the ahankar, which is binding, this ahankar, this misidentification, is coming based on the chains of the modes of material nature, which are 3 categories: the sattva guna, rajoguna, and tamoguna. So that brings us to the end of this particular chapter. So like what I expected, sorry, I've exceeded by a few minutes. We will discuss about time in the next session. And also I'm sure we can start on the topic of karma. So I'll just open up, sorry, it just delayed a bit, but if you're getting too late, you can excuse yourself. But if there are any questions, then I would like to take. I'm just looking at the chat as well. Okay, fine. There are more of comments. Yeah, Nimisha ji has made that comment. Yes, she liked the concept of the jail with the 3 kind of cells. Yes, I'm just repeating what the great souls have told. These are very nice examples. So, any questions? Wonderful. That means you've all understood everything. So you're all liberated from all chains.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, just want to ask something.
Yes.
We are always bound by the 3 modes of material nature, Prabhuji. Even though we would try so hard, even understanding Krishna being supreme, you know, stay Krishna conscious all day and all night, even then we are bound by modes, Prabhuji. So how to overcome the mode of goodness, which is, you know, obviously passion and ignorance we can avoid, but we can't stop being in mode of goodness many a time.
So what is the difference between the mode of goodness and what is the difference between being spiritual? So the essential difference is why mode of goodness binds is we are still being good, but we are still being good at a material level, which means we are still identifying ourselves with the body. We are still trying to be an independent enjoyer. So ultimately, like what we discussed, ultimately it is that sense of misidentification resulting from ignorance, which is the cause of our bondage. So how do we spiritualize Sattva Guna and make it spiritual? It is essentially still by being good, but that goodness is not dedicated or directed towards satisfying one's own egoistic desires, but rather it is directed towards serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when our goodness is directed towards the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it actually becomes spiritual in nature. As long as we are doing activities for one's own independent enjoyment, all these activities are still rooted in ahankar, which means they are still material in nature, and that is why they still generate karma. And that is why Krishna repeatedly says, act with detachment from selfish desire and act in such a way that the object or the motivation of your activity is for my pleasure. So it is that motivation which converts an activity from being material to spiritual. So many of us may gradually come to the platform of goodness, but to transcend, we have to keep Krishna in the center, right? And that is why we have been mentioning, in the earlier classes also, in the practical application of Bhagavad Gita also, how even in our day-to-day life, we have to bring Krishna as the center of our activities. And that is why we establish Krishna in our home. We try to make our home a temple. We offer Naivedya to the Lord. We offer Aarti to the Lord. This is how we bring Krishna in the center, which means I'm cooking, not for me, but for Krishna. I'm cleaning, not for me, but because this is Krishna's temple. I'm taking care of my family, not for me, but because they are also Krishna's children and Krishna has given their responsibility to me. So in that way, when we remove the focus from ourselves and direct it towards Krishna, even though the activity is the same, we move from goodness to transcendence because the false ego is removed. You understand? False ego is what is directing everything towards me, aham and mama. That is why in Yajna we say, idam Krishnaya, idam na mama. It's not for me. Oh Krishna, this is for you. That is what we do in the Yajna, isn't it? We take the ghee or we take the ahuti, and what we say, idam Krishnaya, or whatever deity we are worshipping. This is for you, O Lord. This is not for me. What is that activity meaning? It is meant to re-emphasize. In one sense, it is like a, what you call in today's terms, positive affirmation. It's a spiritual positive affirmation. This is not for me, this is for Krishna. This is not for me, this is for Krishna. We repeatedly do it and we reinforce our consciousness in such a way that we transcend from simply goodness to spiritual goodness, which is Vishuddha Sattva. So that is how we purify and subliminate the false ego into the pure ego. The false ego is still selfish in nature, but the pure ego is selfless because the pure ego understands that my real happiness doesn't lie in satisfying my needs. My real self-interest lies in serving the Lord. Why? Because I am part and parcel of God. So, of course, it's
Excellent
consciousness.
answer, Prabhuji.
Yeah, sorry?
Excellent answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, the point is that this is again not an overnight process. And that is why the process of sadhana bhakti is given, so that in our day-to-day activities in this world, how we can bring Krishna into focus. That is why Krishna says in the Gita, no, Tasma sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. In all activities, bring me in to the picture. Why? Currently, in all activities, you are in the focus, and that is why you are getting bound. Make me the focus. Yat karoshi yad ashnashi, yad juhosi dadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunte, yat tat kurushva madarpana. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you give away, in all activities, Arjuna, bring me into the focus. Krishna is giving this very simple but very profound wisdom. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that. So for more details on this topic, refer to the 14th chapter summary that we discussed, and also our discussion on the practical aspects of Bhagavad Gita, which is part of our series. So if anybody has missed that, then they can go and refer to those classes. Thank you so much. Any other question? Has anybody joined for the first time today? I see Ruchi ji, Ruchi Goraksha ji. Welcome, Ruchi ji. Most of the others, I think I know. Okay. Okay, so thank you all very much. So please do reflect on this. This is a very deep and profound subject matter. And this technicality is not insignificant. This is very important for our spiritual understanding. Upendra Prabhu, anything you want to say or add? Okay, thank you so much. So thank you all, and I'll see you on Saturday where we'll continue with our Bhagavatam discussions. Okay, Hare Krishna.